Tonight, your bedroom will probably sit somewhere around 68 degrees. You didn't build that, a machine did. Somewhere in a wall or a window, a compressor is quietly pulling heat out of your room and dumping it outside, and you'll fall asleep without ever thinking about the fact that for almost the entire span of human existence, that machine simply did not exist. So rewind 200,000 years. You're not in a bedroom. You're on a thin bed of grass inside a shallow stone shelter in the mountains of what's now South Africa. The rock around you has been soaking up sunlight all day, and it's still giving that heat back, slowly, into the night air. There's no breeze reaching you. The air feels thick enough to chew, and your body tonight needs to do the exact same thing it's about to do in your bedroom tonight. Drop its internal temperature by a degree or two, just to let your brain power down, except nothing around you is helping. So here's the actual question worth asking. With no fans, no ice, no synthetic sheets, no machines of any kind, how did the human body ever manage to sleep through nights that hot for hundreds of thousands of years in a row? The first part of the answer is written directly into your skin, and it's one of the strangest trades evolution ever made. Humans carry somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, more densely packed than in any other primate on the planet, with concentrations as high as 550 glands per square centimeter on the palms alone. A 2018 study out of the University of Massachusetts Amherst, led by researcher Andrew Best, traced this back to a specific evolutionary pressure. As early humans moved out of shaded forest and into the open grasslands of East Africa, roughly 2 to 3 million years ago, the species that survived weren't the ones that panted like other mammals to cool down. They were the ones that sweated, constantly and efficiently, and lost the fur that would have trapped that heat against the skin in the first place. That fur loss wasn't only useful for surviving hot afternoons chasing prey across open ground, the persistence hunting theory most associated with Harvard biologist Daniel Lieberman. It also mattered every single night. Bare skin radiates heat outward far more efficiently than fur-covered skin ever could, which means the same trait that helped early humans hunt under a brutal midday sun also helped them cool down once darkness fell. Evidence for darker, melanin-rich skin appears in the genetic record by around 1.2 million years ago. And it likely only became necessary once the body was already exposed and hairless, needing new protection from ultraviolet light it never used to face. But sweat glands alone weren't enough. If the air itself is as hot as your skin, heat has nowhere left to escape to, no matter how efficiently your body radiates it. That's a wall biology alone can't solve. And the archaeological record shows that early humans didn't just wait it out. They built their way around it. At a site called Border Cave in the Lubombo Mountains along the border of South Africa and Eswatini, archaeologist Lynn Wadley published a landmark 2020 study in the journal Science, documenting bedding roughly 200,000 years old, the oldest known constructed sleeping surface ever found. It wasn't a random pile of grass. Layers of broadleaf grass sat on top of a foundation of ash, deliberately maintained and refreshed across generations. And mixed into it were traces of camphor bush, a plant still used today across parts of East Africa, specifically as a natural insect repellent. That ash layer wasn't an accident either. It served two very deliberate purposes. It created a dry barrier between the sleeper and the ground, and it worked as a natural desiccant, drying out and killing the ticks and lice that would otherwise burrow into fresh grass bedding. The ground itself, remember, was part of the problem. Rock and packed earth absorb solar heat all day and release it slowly for hours afterward. The same reason pavement stays warm long after sunset. A thick mat of dry grass over ash created a pocket of trapped air between a sleeping body and that radiating ground. And trapped air is a remarkably poor conductor of heat. Someone in a cave 200,000 years ago had effectively invented insulation without ever needing a word for it. Even with cooler skin and better bedding, the hottest nights still won sometimes. And that's where timing itself became the next tool. In 2015, researcher Gandhi Yetish, working alongside UCLA sleep scientist Jerome Siegel, tracked the sleep patterns of 3 present-day hunter-gatherer societies whose lifestyles closely mirror ancient conditions: the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia. What they found overturned a common assumption. These groups weren't sleeping from sunset straight through to sunrise. Average sleep across all 3 groups came out to roughly 6.4 hours a night, and sleep onset didn't track with darkness at all. It tracked with temperature. People fell asleep as the surrounding air was cooling and woke up near the coldest point of the night, usually right before dawn. On hotter nights, sleep started later and lasted noticeably less time. The body, in effect, waited for permission from the temperature outside before it would allow sleep to begin. That raises an obvious problem. Less sleep on the hottest nights should mean a serious rest deficit. So how did ancient humans make up the difference? The likely answer is that they didn't sleep in one continuous block at all. Historian A. Roger Ekirch, after spending 16 years combing through pre-industrial written records, documented over 500 separate historical references to something called first sleep and second sleep, two roughly 4-hour blocks of rest separated by a waking period of an hour or two in the dead of night. This wasn't described as a sleep disorder. It was simply normal. People woke, tended a fire, talked quietly, sometimes visited a neighbor, then returned to a second stretch of sleep until morning. In genuinely hot climates, that waking window likely lined up with the coolest hours of the whole night, exactly the stretch where lying still and radiating heat into cold air would have worked best. And crucially, nobody was doing any of this alone. In 2017, anthropologist David Sampson at the University of Toronto fitted members of a Hadza community with wrist-worn activity trackers and monitored them continuously for 20 days. Across those 20 full nights, there were only 18 total minutes in which every single member of the group happened to be asleep at the exact same time. At almost any given moment in the darkness, a median of 8 people were awake somewhere in camp. This wasn't random insomnia. It tracked directly with each person's natural chronotype. Older members tended to fall asleep and wake earliest. Younger members stayed up latest. And the overlap created a rolling wave of alertness that covered nearly the entire night. Sampson later described this pattern with a phrase that stuck: the poorly sleeping grandparent hypothesis. An older relative's broken, restless sleep isn't a malfunction. It's a security system that's been running for roughly 2 million years, ensuring someone in camp was always alert enough to check a fire, watch for a predator, or hear a crying child. As human communities grew into cities, architecture picked up where biology and bedding left off. In Sumer, roughly 5,000 years ago, in what's now Iraq, homes were built with flat roofs specifically because indoor air on a summer night was simply unbearable. Families cooked, ate, and slept up on the roof, fully exposed to open sky, and there was real physics behind that choice, even without a name for it. A clear night sky acts as an enormous heat sink, pulling infrared radiation upward from any exposed surface, which means a rooftop with nothing overhead can actually cool several degrees below the surrounding air temperature. The Sumerians didn't need the term radiative cooling to understand that sleeping under open stars beat sleeping under a roof. Ancient Egyptians pushed the idea further. In Thebes, where summer temperatures regularly pushed past 110 degrees Fahrenheit, people slept on rooftops behind wet reed mats hung across windows and doorways, cooling any breeze that passed through the house, alongside water-filled clay pots left out simply to evaporate and pull heat from the surrounding air, a primitive but genuinely effective form of evaporative cooling. In Persia, the city of Yaz developed something even more ambitious: tall, wind-catching towers called badgirs, some standing for over 1,000 years, engineered to funnel moving air down into living spaces below and drop indoor temperatures by as much as 12 degrees Celsius compared to the world outside. None of this was decoration. Every one of these was a purpose-built sleep technology, designed by people who understood a simple rule long before they had the science to explain it. If you can't cool the body directly, cool the air around it, and if you can't cool the air, move the body somewhere the air is already cooler. Step back, and the full picture is remarkable. Ancient humans faced a genuine nightly engineering problem: a body that needs to cool down in order to sleep, trapped inside an environment actively working against that cooling, and they answered it on every level available to them. Biologically, by trading fur for sweat glands and bare, heat-radiating skin. Materially, by building insulated bedding that separated the body from a scorching ground. Behaviorally, by shifting sleep to track the temperature curve and splitting rest into 2 segments instead of 1. Socially, by distributing wakefulness across an entire group, so no single person was ever unconscious during the most dangerous hours. And architecturally, by lifting sleeping bodies up toward open sky and channeling moving air through entire buildings. Every one of those solutions is still quietly running inside you tonight. Your core temperature will still drop before you fall asleep. Blood will still rush toward your hands and feet to vent heat outward. A mechanism researchers at the University of Basel have shown is one of the strongest predictors of exactly how fast a person falls asleep. You'll do all of this underneath a thermostat and a climate-controlled room without giving it a single conscious thought. You are still underneath all of it. A tropical primate whose ancestors solved the problem of unbearable nights so thoroughly over so many generations that you've completely forgotten it was ever a problem worth solving at all.